out there today. This is your boy Roto Beast. I'm here with my boy Jeremy. We're here to present you our MLB On Deck segment for Wednesday, April 3rd. If you're new to this channel, please make sure to click the subscribe button below. This way you can watch all of our MLB, NBA, NFL videos. If you haven't came and checked out our website here at dfscheatsheet.com, you're absolutely missing out. We have all the tools to help you compete with the pros day in and day out, including a complete optimizer, tons of content, daily FanDuel, and DraftKings cash signups. Hey, we're truly a one-stop shop for all your DFS needs. So make sure to come check out the site here at dfscheatsheet.com. So, hey, what up, Jeremy? How you doing, bro?
Yo, what's up, man?
A small slate, 5 games, and I think this is the smallest main slate that we've had so far, if I'm correct. So options are a little bit more slim compared to what they've been. But I definitely think there's some teams that we could target bat-wise. And, pitching's a little bit more iffy on the slate. But, hey, we're going to do our best to kind of get you guys set up in the right position to get you going on tonight's slate. So you ready to talk some baseball, bro?
Yeah, let's get into it.
For sure. And one thing I'm going to say, and I'll be honest with you, basketball is more my sport. Baseball is more your sport. And I've been learning a lot, man. I'm still trying to continue to learn the extra stats that you really got to look at. There's a lot of things that you got to look at outside of just the basics in baseball. So definitely, man, and we got to keep grinding, and we're going to continue to pump out this content for you guys. So, man, let's jump into it. I'm just going to start with pitchers. First pitcher I'm going to go with, I think it's an easy pitcher on the slate. He's going to be crazy high owned. You got Garrett Cole going against Texas. Texas is a team that definitely has a couple bats that could do some damage, but they also got a lot of strikeouts in that lineup as well. Garrett Cole, he's a guy that he's going to basically get you 6 innings and get you close to 10 strikeouts, pretty much every single game. That's what he did last game. He got against Tampa Bay. He got you exactly 6 innings, 10 Ks, gave up 1 earned run, and got a quality start for, I think, like 45 fantasy points or something like that. It was a pretty good outing, and it wasn't, and he didn't even do the best. He could have did a little bit better. So I'm gonna go right back to the well. I think Garrett Cole is, the cash game pitcher. The guy was in the race for the Cy Young last year, had the best year of his career. In a solid first start to the season. So Garrett Cole is going to be the first guy that I'm going to roll with as my pitcher.
Yeah, man. So, look, I'm going to do a couple of things here, bro. I'm going to tell you guys that here's how I'm going to probably start doing this video because we do it in the morning. We call it the On Deck video, and it's more like give you guys some stuff to think about and start looking into. And then we produce a bunch of content on the site where we actually break things down and give you the whys and all of that. So, on this slate right here is probably where I'm going to start making that transition. I'm going to kind of give you things to look at. And then if you want what I'm actually going to go with, then look at my stacks article that's up on the site every day. I'll start adding more detail to that as far as pitching and not just stacks. But I'm going to kind of point in that direction and give you some things to look at. So the first thing that I'm going to give you to look at is there's 4 other pitchers outside of the 2 that you're going to mention, right? So you mentioned Cole. Your next one we know is going to be Stripling. And then outside of that, you've got some guys who were favorites, and you just looking at the money line, right? So you've got, for instance, you could look at Mikolas, right? You can look at Mikolas, or you could look at Jameson Taillon. Those 2 guys are definitely in play. You could look at a Julio Teheran at home, who's a minus 135. You could look at a Nathan Eovaldi, who's a minus 135. You could look at, the guy you're going to mention, Ross Stripling. So there's other guys, and when you start talking about tournaments, you have to take a look at the 2 sites and what's important. On FanDuel, there's a ton of importance on that quality start. So you need a guy who has the opportunity to give you a quality start, and then you need the strikeouts, right? So a guy for me, like for tournaments that I'm going to just completely eliminate, is going to be like a Marco Estrada. You take a struggling Boston team, and you're looking at Boston struggling with the bats. You think Marco Estrada, a ground ball guy. I'm not going with there because there's no strikeout upside. So I'll kind of give you the 4 guys I'm looking at, which would be a Taillon, Eovaldi. Go ahead.
I thought Marco Estrada is an extreme fly ball pitcher.
Estrada throws well. Okay, so
that's what I've always thought the past couple of years.
Here's the thing. When what?
That's what I've thought the past couple of years when he was in Toronto. Is I thought he was a really fly ball pitcher.
Estrada throws a slider though, okay? And a slider is not typically a fly ball pitch, it's a ground ball pitch, right? And when that guy's throwing really, really well, he throws his slider. His slider is his get people out pitch. And you have to kind of look at that as well. The thing you want to look at for me with pitchers is every pitcher has an out pitch, right? They set up their out pitch. And pitchers are all about getting guys to swing at a pitch that they want them to swing at and not making a mistake. We all know a home run or a hard hit ball is basically a mistake. It's a pitch that the pitcher left up. How many times have you seen, a really good pitcher throw a pitch and then the second it leaves their hand and they hear off the bat, they know it's gone because they didn't locate the pitch where they wanted to locate it. So it's about location and it's about it's about setting up your out pitch. So you take an Estrada, a guy who's a slider pitcher, etc. He doesn't. My point with Estrada is this: the strikeout upside through 2 games is not there. He struck out 3 guys in 2 games. It's not there. So on FanDuel, that you need stuff like that. So the 4 guys I'm kind of looking at outside the 2 you mentioned are Taillon, Evaldi, Mikolas, and Julio Teheran. I'll get more into who I'm going to recommend in that Stacks article. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, I think today's one of those days compared to some of the other days that there's not. It's a good kind of day for the way that you play, how you kind of get a little bit of exposure to a bunch of different pitchers with a bunch of different stacks. Because there's not really the clear-cut pitchers outside of really the top 2 pitchers.
But part of this also is 2 things, right? You mentioned that you thought Estrada was an extreme fly ball pitcher, right? So let me just say this. What a guy's stats show and what he's trying to do are 2 different things, right? That's a good way to attack a guy, right? If you're looking at his numbers, and I'll tell you, look, Roto Grinders, I use Roto Grinders for some stats. I'll put that out there, but I don't use them when it comes to like strikeout rate, fly ball rate, those types of things, because Roto Grinders takes it as a whole. They don't take it like they don't treat it equal for that particular game, if you will, if that makes sense. So you can't look at like you have to kind of look and see what's a pitcher trying to accomplish and what he's actually doing, right? Is a guy a ground ball pitcher based on does he throw a sinker? Does he throw a cutter? Does he throw a slider? If those are 3 of his pitches and his fly ball to ground ball rate is extremely skewed and he's throwing a lot more fly balls and ground balls, but his pitch selection and what he's throwing is in his arsenal says he's a ground ball pitcher, but he's giving up a lot of fly balls, that might be an indicator of a guy you want to attack.
Right, you can't locate his pitches, etc. Got you. So I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, Cole, like I said, I feel is the cash game pitcher. Stripling for the Dodgers, I think, is probably the second best pitcher on the slate as far as just giving you a solid floor. The problem with Stripling, and me and you've been talking about this the past couple of days, and we got burned by it a little bit. Is Dave Roberts? He doesn't really like to let his pitchers go deep into a game. Perfect example, Stripling. Last game, I mean, he went 5 1/3 innings. He only gave up 3 hits and got 5 strikeouts, but he got pulled after 5 1/3 innings, and I felt like he had a little bit more gas in the tank. But hey, it's early in the season. Especially earlier in the season, there's no need for these managers to really extremely push these guys when they have the whole entire season in front of them. So I just want to mention that. So like I said, for me, I like Cole. I like Stripling. Pitching wise for you mentioned it. There's a couple guys that you like it for GPPs, but you kind of definitely want to get a mixture of some of those other guys. I mean, do you want to just move into bats and kind of get that going?
Yeah, we can move into bats as well. And I'll tell you, I'll do the same thing with bats. I'll tell you guys the bat. It's good, bro. I'm going to tell you this. I think that moving forward, I'm kind of telling you guys what I'm going to do with this piece. I'm going to give you more of a preview of who I'm looking at and not necessarily picks, because I spent a lot of time with my research and I put that in the article that I put out later in the day.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want, go ahead and get us started with kind of what team you're targeting first or whatnot.
Look, so I mean, there's a lot of places you could go on this slate, right? And there's some things that are going to stick out for people who are looking at implied run totals. You're going to take a look at Houston. You're going to take a look at Boston, Atlanta, the Dodgers. They all have the highest implied run totals, right? But are there spots that you can exploit? I think one thing that's very interesting is looking at, and I'll get into this in the article, is looking at Houston has put on a ton of runners in the past 3 games or 2 games against Texas. And, they're not pushing runs across, right? Why is that? Some of it's timely hitting, right? And they went up against a gas can yesterday and Shelby Miller. The guy couldn't locate his pitches. He was walking guys. He gave up some hard contact. Today they're throwing Mike Minor. And Mike Minor, I know his salary is really low. I actually think that you could probably look at Mike Minor as a SP2 on DK. I think it'd be really contrarian. Could he get you 12 points today? Can he get you a quality start? So those are things I'm looking at. I think that Pittsburgh is really interesting with Mikolas and Taillon both -110. Mikolas did give up 5 runs to Milwaukee, so I am looking down there a little bit as well. And Stripling, I know he has really good stuff. You're not going to stack the Giants against him. The A's are a team that I'm going to continue to look at. So I'm really looking, I'm looking at Pittsburgh. I'm looking at Oakland. And I'm also looking at the teams that everybody else is going to be looking at with, the top 4 implied run totals.
For sure. Yeah, man. I mean, Houston's probably the favorite team that I'm looking at. Like you said, they're getting guys on. Guys are getting on. They're just not being clutch right now, and they're bound to have a monster game. Texas is a team, is a stadium that, we mentioned it a couple of times already. They gave up the most runs last year of any stadium. The ball flies there, and Houston's due for one of those breakout games. They're a team stacked with guys who absolutely crush lefties. You got a couple of guys with really good numbers. So I like Houston a lot. Houston is going to probably be the chalky. A lot of people are going to go with Cole and probably for Houston. That's probably going to be the chalky way that people are going to go with cash games today on this slate. Another team too that I think that I'm going to continue to look at Boston. We're talking about Estrada. He's not really striking anybody out right now. Boston's struggling. I understand. They have some guys that have really good numbers in their career off of Estrada. And look, man, I understand that they're struggling, but this is pretty much the exact same team that won the World Series last year. I don't know if it's kind of a little bit of World Series hangover, or they just kind of have to really get going in the season, or what's going on with them. But Boston, they're due to have a really, really good game. And I can see it happening in this spot going against Estrada, man.
Look, they're, like you said, they're struggling, right? They're struggling all the way around. And I think that you have to look at some other factors that go into it. It's why, I don't believe that BVP is the end-all be-all. Yesterday's a great example. JD Martinez, great career numbers against Fires, and I think he had 1 hit yesterday, right? So, and that was in the first inning. In his first at bat, he had a single to left field. So, to me, BVP is an okay place to look. Is it the end all be all? No, it is not. Is a guy in a slump right now? Is his hard contact rate down? And that's Boston, right? Boston's not making a lot of loud contact. They're just Boston's struggling, man. They've had a couple of good games, but they're struggling. Are they bound to break out of it? Yes. Is recency bias bound to set in? This is a slate for me where you almost wish it was a full slate, and you could go right back to the well with Boston at a low ownership, being in a late game, not playing very well, right? Unfortunately, it's a smaller slate, and Houston's kind of in the same boat. They've let people down. And today's just a small slate. They're going to be chalky.
Hey, I think. You said it perfectly, bro. You said it perfectly. Both of these teams, they've been struggling, and we've been on them. And yes, we've been off a little bit, but they were in good spots. They just didn't produce. And if this was a monster slate, we definitely could get both of those teams at low ownership. But the fact that it is a really small slate, yeah. Two struggling teams that we're going to continue targeting. They are going to be chalky because, obviously they're in the best spots on the slate for sure.
Right. So you're going to go ahead and break down. You can break down Houston as well, bro.
Just real quick. I pretty much just touched on it. Houston has a bunch of guys who crush lefties. It's plain and simple. And then, look, I got what, 5 guys that already have home runs in their career off Mike Minor. A couple guys that are really sticking out to me. You got Gurriel, 6 for 13, a double, 2 home runs. Springer's 5 for 15 with 2 home run, with 2 double. Sorry. And then, I'm just going to quickly, you got to mention Correa, you got to mention Bregman, and you got to mention Altuve. All those guys have really, really good numbers in their careers against lefties. So they're all definitely in play. And then Chirinos, he came over from Texas. He's a cheap guy that he's hit lefties very well for his career as well. So, the main thing I got to talk about with Houston is just they got a bunch of guys that hit lefties really good in the best hitting park in the majors last season. It's an easy spot to go to.
So here's one thing I'm looking at, and I mentioned Mike Minor, right? So let me just give you a couple of things. Houston already this year, through the 6 games they've played, they've struck out 41 times. They've struck out 41 times in 6 games, right? So you start doing that as an average, and that's over 6 times per game that lineup is striking out. And you start at the top, the leadoff spot, and George Springer, who's already struck out 8 times. Granted, he's 7 for 23 and hitting 304, and he has hit 2 home runs, but he's struck out 8 times. Chirinos,
I'm sorry.
Springer, George Springer.
Another thing, I'm not trying to interrupt you, is like Altuve. I was watching the game the other day, and Altuve, we know he's a guy that doesn't strike out very much. He's a really, really good hitter. And I was watching the game the other day, and he was up there just looking lost at the plate, swinging at balls that weren't even close in the strike zone.
Right. So when I talk about Mike Minor, and I think you can give him at this point where I'm at in my research, and again, look at my stacks piece later on, but you look at Mike Minor last year, nothing impressive. He went 1-1 with a 4.88 ERA, 27 2/3 innings pitched over 5 games against Houston. And look, 23 strikeouts, right? So 23 strikeouts, he averaged giving up 3 runs against him. They only hit 240 against him. It's a guy, I think, where Houston is at right now, striking out 41 times as a lineup through 6 games. I think that, he may give up 4 runs or 5 runs, or they may blow him up, but there's a chance that this guy could work himself out of a jam and give you 12 points as your SP2 also.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really where I'm at, man. I mean, I talked about my pitchers. I talked about my couple bats. Is there any other bats that you think are going to be contrarian today, but that you think could definitely go off or have a really good day?
I will get more into that when I do the stacks piece, but look, you have to look at it. You have to look at where guys are at. I think that the Mikolas and Taillon situation is really interesting. I think that St. Louis, their run total is 3.8. They're going to go against Jameson Taillon. Vegas has them. I believe the last time I looked, they were both -110. So we'll get, I'll get more into that later, but I think that there's interesting stuff there with that lineup. That's a stout lineup also in St. Louis. It's flying under the radar. They added Goldschmidt. They've got Ozuna. They've got Colton Wong, who's a really good hitting second baseman. They've got guys in that lineup. De Jong. I think that's an interesting spot. Taillon has really good stuff, but I think that's a spot, because you start looking at price also for pitchers, and you start looking at where, Garrett Cole, obviously at the top, Ross Stripling is right there as well. And you start looking at, to get Houston and Boston bats, who are the top 2 implied totals in your lineup, and Atlanta's not cheap either when you talk about Freddie Freeman and Ronald Acuna and those guys. Who are you going to pay down for at the pitching spot? That, to me, is what you have to figure out today. You can't just make, especially in tournaments, if you're going to max enter something, you can't just enter 150 lineups with Houston and Boston. I mean, you've got to figure out how to be different. Everybody's going to be on those teams, is my point.
Right, for sure. And not even that is that both of those teams are pretty priced up as well, even though they've been kind of up and down. So yeah, like you said, you're gonna have to find a couple cheap pitchers that you're comfortable with, and just to give you a decent floor. This way, you can get those big bats.
I think there's a couple of really interesting pitchers. Mike Minor may not be a guy that I go with, just because the why is there. He could give you those points, but I think that there's 2 lefties that are really interesting in Minor and Holland. I even think Estrada is interesting, given the fact that he's pitched decent. He has a quality start under his belt. I just think today's a good day to be different, and there's a couple of spots that I'm looking to try and see if the research says, yes, you can do that.
Yeah. Do you like Lester Teheran at all? I mean, they're 2 of the better pitchers on the slate, but they're going against each other in a really good park. I mean, a really good hitters park in Atlanta. I mean, are you on them? What do you think about those guys?
Let me ask you a question. Has John Lester started throwing to first base?
No. John Lester, he doesn't feel comfortable throwing to first base.
Right. So I mean, you're talking about a guy who gives up. You can get in scoring position off Lester, right? So not the best place for him to start his season in Arlington, obviously. And I told you that day. Remember, I think I said in the video, I said Texas is another team you could probably look to stack up. But look, I'm not really interested in Lester right now. I'm going to take a wait and see with the guy. Look, he's getting, as they say, long in the tooth as well. Tehran,
he's gonna have ownership though, based on the name though.
That's fine. I mean,
Right.
Look, our job doing these videos and producing the content we do is to make you a better player, right? But at the end of the day, our job is to give you information, and you have to own your process. You have to be the guy that makes a decision. It's your money you're putting in. And if you think that John Lester's the guy, all we can do is give you the information, and you have to make the decision and be comfortable with it. So
I'm not wrong, John Lester. I was just asking in your opinion.
No, I don't see myself having I don't see any reason to on this slate. If it was a 3-game slate and he was the best pitching option on the slate and that's where you had to roll, then it would dictate how you needed to build your lineups. But I don't see the need for it. One thing too you can look at is there's a couple of parks where the ball flies out of, and a couple of them are on this slate, right? Like Atlanta's a good hitting environment. Texas is a good hitting environment, but we're in the middle of spring and it's not 90 degrees in these spots. That's something to consider also. I mean, and the other guy that I'll talk about before we jump off is Derek Holland. I think Derek Holland could garner some ownership. If you can get Derek Holland at 1% today and he's going to give you, a quality start, which like Bumgarner did last night, the Dodgers have not lit up the scoreboard against the Giants, against Pomerantz or Bumgarner. I understand Bellinger hit a grand slam last night, but if you look at how that inning happened, there was no earned runs allotted to Bumgarner in that situation because it was an unearned situation. It was errors that caused that inning to get out of control. So did he give up a home run to Bellinger? Yes. It was a grand slam. Did they pick up 4 runs? Yes. But in 2 games against the lefties, how much hard contact have the Dodgers had?
Right. And, one thing though is we've been saying the past couple of days, it's, they play each other tough. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. And those games tend to be a little bit lower scoring games. But yeah, man, I mean, that's really all I got. So, I mean, if you're ready to go, we could get up out of here. Jeremy, like you said, he's going to get his stacks video up shortly. I'm going to get my MLB core video and my NBA core video up. So we got a lot of content rolling in today. We got a lot of content rolling in every day. Got a bunch of other sports up now. We got content for MMA, PGA, NHL, NASCAR. We're still going strong with NBA with a few articles every day. And then obviously we got a bunch of stuff coming on for MLB now that we got MLB started. So, hey, man, if you guys haven't already, make sure to check out the site, dfscheatsheet.com. We're in a very, very exciting time for our company. Hey, jump on the money team. Hey, don't miss out on what we got going. All right, guys, peace out.